My world ended with a text message on a Tuesday afternoon. "We need to talk when you get home. It's important." That was it. From Sophia, my girlfriend of 6 years. We'd been living together for 4, in this little rent-controlled apartment in Queens that we'd painted together, filling it with IKEA furniture and dreams of a house upstate someday. I met her in college. She was a literature major. I was in business. She was quoting Sylvia Plath when I first talked to her at a campus cafe, and I was hooked, even though I had to Google who Sylvia Plath was later. The life we built was quiet, good. I worked as a logistics manager for a small firm. She was a junior editor at a publishing house. Our routines were sacred. Sunday morning pancakes, Thursday night takeout, and bad reality TV, long walks with our rescue mutt, Baxter. We talked about marriage, but in a vague, someday way. I was saving for a ring, a specific vintage Art Deco one she'd pointed out in a magazine once. It was tucked in the back of my sock drawer, waiting for the perfect moment that never seemed to arrive, because honestly, every moment with her felt perfect enough. That Tuesday, I came home early, a knot in my stomach. She was sitting at our kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea gone cold. She didn't look at me. "I can't do this anymore," she said, her voice flat, empty. "I love you, but I'm not in love with you. I need more. I need to see what else is out there." It felt like the floor had dissolved. I asked all the desperate questions. Was there someone else? Had I done something wrong? Was it the long hours I'd been working? I offered solutions, couples therapy, a vacation, space. I begged, I'm ashamed to say. I pleaded with the woman who'd been my best friend, my anchor, to remember who we were. She just shook her head, tears streaming silently. "It's not you. It's me. I need to be free. We got together so young. I don't know who I am without you." The cliches were like little knives. She'd already packed a suitcase. She was going to stay with her sister, Megan, in Brooklyn. She hugged Baxter goodbye for a long time, her tears wet his fur, and then she walked out. Just like that. 6 years, over in 20 minutes. The silence she left behind was deafening. I went nuclear. I blocked her number, her socials, everything. I couldn't bear to see a trace of her. I threw myself into work, into drinking with my friends, into numb, furious gym sessions. My buddy Dave tried to get me back on the dating apps after a month. I went on one date with a nice woman named Cara. We had a pleasant dinner. I spent the whole time comparing her laugh to Sophia's and went home to cry in the shower. I was a mess. Baxter was my only comfort. He'd curl up next to me on the couch, sighing heavily as if he understood. I stopped cooking because it reminded me of her. I lived on delivery and cereal. The apartment became a tomb of our shared life. I couldn't bring myself to take down the photos, but I couldn't look at them either, for months crawled by. The raw pain had scabbed over into a dull, constant ache. I was starting to function again. I'd even begun to think about maybe, eventually, moving to a new apartment, a fresh start. Then, on a rainy Thursday evening in October, my doorbell rang. Baxter trotted to the door, wagging his tail. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole, and my heart stopped. It was Sophia. She stood on the welcome mat we bought together at a flea market, soaked, her hair plastered to her face. And she was unmistakably, undeniably pregnant. A pronounced bump strained against her thin coat. All the air left my lungs. I considered not opening the door, but my hand moved on its own, turning the lock. She looked up at me, her eyes huge and terrified. "Ben, please, we need to talk." "You've got to be kidding me," was all I could manage, my voice hoarse. "What are you doing here?" She wrapped her arms around herself. "I've been trying to call. To write. You have to believe me. Please, let me come in." just for a few minutes. Anger, white hot and sudden, surged through me. So you could go find yourself, huh? Found a lot, I see. I gestured vaguely at her stomach. The cruelty of the words felt good for a second, then immediately sickened me. She flinched as if I had struck her. Ben, it's yours. The world tilted. I heard the words, but they made no sense. They echoed in the hollow space she'd left inside me. That's impossible, I whispered. It's true. I'm 5 months along. I was about a month pregnant when I left. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. I stared at her, at the curve of her belly, my mind racing, calculating, denying. You left me to be with other people. You got pregnant by someone else, and now he's gone. And you come back here with this story? The bitterness was a torrent I couldn't stop. No. The word was a sob. I didn't go out with anyone. I never even kissed anyone else. I left. And the next day I woke up and knew I'd made the worst mistake of my life. I tried to call you 100 times. I came here, but you were never home. I wrote letters. I went to your office, but I lost my nerve. I was scared, and then I found out I was pregnant, and I was even more scared. Part of me, the part that still loved her, wanted to believe the desperation in her eyes. The other part, the part she'd broken, saw only a masterful liar. After a long, tense silence on the doorstep, with rain soaking us both, I stepped aside. Come in, but this doesn't mean anything. The apartment felt alien with her in it. Baxter went nuts, whimpering and circling her legs. She bent awkwardly to pet him, tears dripping onto his head. She looked around, taking in the unchanged space. The same books on the shelf, the same blanket folded on the couch. Her eyes lingered on a stupid ceramic owl we'd bought on a trip to Cape Cod. I hadn't had the heart to get rid of it. We sat, a cavernous space between us on the sofa. The story spilled out of her in ragged pieces. The panic that had seized her in the weeks before the breakup. An inexplicable, claustrophobic fear she couldn't articulate. The immediate, crushing regret. The missed period she blamed on stress. The confusing home tests. The final confirmation at a clinic. The agonizing over what to do. I thought about an abortion, she said, her voice small. I made the appointment. I sat in the waiting room for an hour. But I couldn't, not just because of the baby, but because it was our baby, a piece of you I'd been too stupid to hold on to. And I knew I had to find you, to tell you, even if you hated me forever. She claimed she'd told no one for months, hiding her growing belly under baggy clothes, dodging questions from her sister. She'd been living in a state of suspended horror and hope. Why should I believe you? I asked, the question hanging in the air between us. You looked me in the eye and told me you didn't love me anymore. You walked out of this door and out of our life. Your word doesn't mean much to me right now. She nodded, absorbing the blow. I know, I don't deserve your trust, but I'll do anything to earn it back. A paternity test. As soon as possible. I've already asked my doctor about it. You can come to my next appointment. You can have access to my phone, my emails, whatever you need. I have nothing to hide, Ben. I only ever wanted you. I was just too scared and confused to see it. She was offering total transparency. It was the one thing that gave me a flicker of pause. Why would she offer that if she was lying? I told her I needed time. I needed proof. A paternity test was non-negotiable. She agreed immediately without hesitation. She gave me her new number and the date of her next OB/GYN appointment in 1 week. Before she left, she pulled a folded envelope from her purse. I wrote this for you. You don't have to read it now, or ever, but it's there. After she was gone, the envelope sat on my coffee table like a live grenade. I drank 2 beers before I had the courage to open it. It was pages long, front and back, in her familiar, looping handwriting. It was a raw, unvarnished confession of fear, of feeling lost, of the terror of commitment morphing into a self-destructive urge to burn everything down. She wrote about watching me sleep the night before she left, loving me so much it physically hurt, and yet feeling this irrational compulsion to run. She wrote about the nausea she'd mistaken for a heartbreak, the fatigue she blamed on grief. She wrote about wanting our child, about dreaming of a little boy with my smile. She apologized, not in broad strokes, but for specific moments, for ways she'd left, for the cruel phrasing she'd used, for not fighting for us when her panic subsided. I cried. I sat alone in my silent apartment, with Baxter's head on my knee, and I wept for the future we'd lost and the terrifying, complicated one that might be looming. The next week was torture. I was split in two. One man was a betrayed fiancé, armored in skepticism, convinced this was an elaborate trap. The other was a guy who still had her favorite tea in the cupboard, who remembered the sound of her laugh, who had once dreamed of being a father with her. I did research. I read about prenatal paternity tests, about non-invasive ones done with a blood draw from a mother. I read, hesitantly, about pregnancy and mental health, about how hormonal fluctuations can trigger anxiety, depression, and even brief psychotic episodes in rare cases. The phrase pregnancy-related panic came up. It didn't excuse her actions, but it built a context my anger hadn't allowed for. The day of the appointment arrived. I met her at the clinic, a modern building in Manhattan. The air between us was thick with tension. She looked tired but hopeful. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. Her doctor, Dr. Evans, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s. She greeted Sophia warmly and shook my hand with a firm, assessing look. During the ultrasound, I was in a daze. The grainy black and white image on the screen seemed abstract until she pointed out the beating heart, a rapid, fluttering light. "There's your baby," she said, and the words "your baby" hit me with the force of a truck. I saw a profile, a nose, a spine. It was real. It was a person. My person? The possibility became terrifyingly tangible. After the ultrasound, Sophia gave Dr. Evans a look and said, "We'd like to discuss a paternity test. And the other thing we talked about." Dr. Evans nodded. "Ben, why don't you come into my office for a moment?" Once seated, Dr. Evans spoke plainly. "Sophia has authorized me to speak with you. First, the test. We can do a non-invasive prenatal paternity test next week. It's accurate and safe." She is adamant about proceeding. "Okay," I said, my throat dry. "Second," Dr. Evans continued, leaning forward, "she asked me to talk to you about what can happen psychologically to some women in early pregnancy. She described to me a period of intense, irrational panic and dysphoria preceding her decision to leave. While I am not a psychiatrist, what she describes is not unheard of. The hormonal tsunami of the first trimester can destabilize mood and decision-making in profound ways. It doesn't make her actions right, but it may make them understandable as a symptom, not solely a choice." She spoke not as an advocate for Sophia, but as a scientist stating facts. It was the least biased, most convincing argument I'd heard. "She's been through hell these last few months, Ben," Dr. Evans added, her tone softening. "Carrying this alone, racked with guilt, terrified of your rejection. She wants to make this right. The ball is in your court." I left the clinic that day fundamentally changed. The armor of my anger had a crack, and through it I saw not a manipulator, but a profoundly scared, regretful woman carrying my child. I didn't go home. I drove to Brooklyn, to Megan's apartment. Sophia opened the door, surprised. "Can we talk?" "For real this time," I said. We went for a walk along the promenade. The October wind was crisp off the East River. I told her everything, how shattered I had been, how I'd tried to move on, how the sight of her pregnant had felt like a cruel joke. I told her about my research, about my conversation with Dr. Evans. I believe that you were panicked. I believe you didn't know you were pregnant. I said, the words feeling strange and heavy, but you broke my trust in a way that I don't know if it can ever be fully repaired. I want to believe you about everything else, but I need that test. Not because I think you're lying now, but because I need to kill the ghost of that doubt forever. For us, for our family. She stopped walking and turned to me, her eyes shining. I want that too. More than anything. I want you to be sure, so we can start fresh with everything on the table. The test was done the following week. The 7-day wait for results were the longest of my life. We spent cautious, tentative time together. We talked about practical things, finances, prenatal vitamins, baby names. We avoided the deep, painful past, letting it rest for now. It was awkward and fragile, but there were moments when she'd laugh at something stupid Baxter did, or when we debate boy names versus girl names, that felt like echoes of our old selves. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. I read the line 10 times. Then I put my head in my hands and cried, tears of relief, of absolution, of a future suddenly rushing back into view, blurred and different. But there, I drove to her immediately. She was waiting at Megan's, pacing. She took one look at my face and burst into tears. We held each other in the middle of her sister's living room, two shipwreck survivors finally finding solid ground. It's ours, I whispered into her hair. It's really ours. That was the turning point. The ghost was gone. We began the slow, deliberate work of rebuilding. She moved back into our apartment the following weekend. It wasn't a fairy tale reunion. It was messy and emotional. We started couples counseling to navigate the minefield of hurt and betrayal. We had to learn to argue again, not as enemies, but as partners trying to solve a problem. Telling our families was its own drama. My parents were shocked, then ecstatic about the baby, cautious about our reconciliation. Her mother, who always thought I wasn't ambitious enough for her daughter, was coldly disapproving, but eventually conceded for the sake of her grandchild. The pregnancy progressed. I attended every appointment. I felt the first kick, a surreal little flutter under my palm. We painted the second bedroom a soft, gender-neutral yellow. We took a birthing class. The shadow of how this had all begun never fully disappeared, but was softened by the tangible reality of what was coming. A new life that was a part of both of us. One evening, in her 8th month, we were assembling a crib. She was holding a screw. I was wrestling with the instructions. Baxter was chewing on a discarded piece of packaging. You know, she said softly, not looking up from the screw, I don't think I ever stopped loving you. I think I just got so terrified of how much I did, of how much I needed you, that my brain short-circuited and told me to run. It was the stupidest thing I've ever done. I put down the instructions. I know, I said, and I don't think I ever stopped loving you either. I just buried it under so much hurt I couldn't feel it. I walked to my sock drawer, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pulled out the small velvet box that had been gathering dust for over a year. I got down on one knee, right there on the carpet, next to the half-built crib and the dog. Sophia, I said, my voice rough with emotion. This isn't how I planned it. It's better. It's real. We've been through hell, and we're coming out the other side, together, with our child. I don't want to just co-parent. I want to be your husband. I want to build this family, officially. With you? Will you marry me? For real this time? She was crying, laughing, nodding all at once. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. Our son, James, was born on a blustery March morning. He had her eyes and, I swear, my stubborn frown. Holding him for the first time, all the pain, the doubt, the months of heartbreak, folded into irrelevance. They were the price of admission for this moment, for this tiny, perfect human. We got married in a small, simple ceremony in the backyard of my parents' house when James was 3 months old. Sophia wore a simple ivory dress that flowed over her post-baby body. I held our son in my arms as I said my vows. There were no grand illusions this time, no fantasy of a perfect, easy life. Our promises were about choosing each other every day, even on the hard ones, about building a love that was resilient, not just romantic. It's been 2 years now. The scar from the breakup is still there, a faint line we both acknowledge on occasion. Sometimes, in a quiet moment, a flicker of the old insecurity will pass through me. But then I'll watch her reading to James, or feel her hand find mine at night, or hear her laugh at one of my dumb jokes, and the flicker dies. What we have now isn't the naive, fragile love of our 20s. It's something forged in fire, tempered by forgiveness, and stronger than I ever knew possible. We didn't get the storybook romance. We got something better. A real, messy, beautiful family, built not just on love, but on the hard-won choice to come back from the brink and build it together.